There we go. That's the right button I'm looking for. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. Tonight we are going to be doing something a little different again. I have with me Mike Curn. He's one of the quality QA tester slash developer at Intelitech, so one of my coworkers. Tonight we're going to play around with a new concept called metamorphic testing. This is a fairly new concept to both of us, so if you haven't heard of it, don't feel bad. You're in good company. And so really it's going to be just kind of playing around and figuring out what is it good for and when would it be key to apply it, I guess. So with that, let me switch over here and I can click buttons. There we go. Mike, you want to say hello?
Hello.
There we are. So if you don't see his picture, that's intentional. No webcam. You just get to hear the voice from beneath. And actually, real quick, I forgot to warn you about this, Mike. I'm going to run subtitles and see how this works.
All right.
So we'll see how it goes. Not 100% confident what it's going to do. It may end up actually not even working because I think Skype has captured my microphone. So with that in mind, we're just going to abandon that thought altogether and go without. Perfect. Because it's not like that app ever had any bugs. For those people who remember last week's stream, it was all about trying to get that thing working and delivered, and still have not quite gotten that point. So, okay, so metamorphic testing. So there are a couple blogs that I'm going to drop some links in the chat here real quick that we're going to be looking at. This is going to be the primary one there to kind of talk through. So I'm going to just scroll this thing to the top, Mike. I don't know if you want to follow along with it and kind of go through it. I think, I guess I'll go through some of the background stuff, and then you can start kind of going through the metamorphic testing and sort of explain it. So the first thing to note is terminology matters, right? So the key thing with most tests, so this is probably still something that you would write in either a unit or a functional test. Right? And most tests tend to be what they call oracle tests, meaning you effectively know the answer ahead of time. I know that given input A, I get answer B. That's the correct answer. I have deemed it. Some people will call it like an expert system as well. And that's sort of the simplest form of testing. But as your inputs start to get larger, this only gives you sort of one data point. You know, sometimes you do data-driven tests and populate it with a bunch of stuff. And that gets you a little further, but it doesn't get you all the way there. Is that fair, Mike?
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a great way to summarize it. And, you know, as being in the QA field, I've watched the complexity of the systems that I've tested just grow pretty much since I entered the space. It's very rare when I get something that's less complex than something I tested before. So this popped up on my radar, kind of. Kelly Adams actually was the one that linked it to me, another coworker of ours, and it stayed on my radar as I've encountered some interesting challenges actually at one of our current clients, which I'll talk about in a little bit.
Okay. So usually, at least the way this article progresses, is beyond the oracle or the expert system test that you go into generative testing, or the way I've always heard it called is property-based testing, where you no longer test for a given point. You test with some sort of generated point. And so in this case, they're just using random generated data. I usually favor something like a library called Bogus. And this is one of those areas where you start to get some people that'll cringe a little bit, because a lot of people don't like random data, or I should say purely random data going into their unit tests, because it introduces variability. So you run your tests one time, they all pass. You run them again, and they fail. And then you go, oh, shoot, let me look at that failure, and you can't reproduce it again, right? And so usually having some sort of generated data is fine, but usually people prefer it to be deterministic, so that if it fails, I can hit rerun and see the failure and debug it, because it's really frustrating to try to debug something that happens 1 in 10 times. And so in this case, you start going through and finding properties of your function. So in this case, they're measuring distance, and so they're going through and they're saying, oh, okay, distance between 2 points should always be positive, or I should say, should be non-negative, and just going through and doing that. But that doesn't quite cover all your cases, right? Because all this doesn't guarantee that you've actually gotten the distance between 2 points. It just guarantees that you've returned some value, right, that fits the property. So both of these sort of start to leave you with blind spots. And more importantly, as they call out in the article, finding the properties of your function isn't always as trivial as just looking at looking at the function and knowing that it's distance, right? Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily straightforward. What else? Anything else I missed on that one, Mike, or does that kind of cover it?
I think that covers it. Cool. What's interesting is we're actually at a point in a lot of the efforts I've dealt with where we're struggling through that exact issue right now, where we're moving away from oracles and we're like, okay, so but what are the properties that we should be testing here? So it's interesting that this article's laid out kind of in a very similar progression to how I've seen a lot of projects play out, and my own learning. Actually, I should to make it personal.
That's perfect. So do you then want to dive in? I know the article then dives in sort of the motivation behind it, and then starting to talk about metamorphic testing. Do you want to kind of do an intro there?
Yeah. So based on my understanding, and finding really good examples of this is actually kind of hard. There's not a whole lot of people that I found that are doing this in concrete fashion that are also putting that information out in public. But as far as I understand, the idea behind metamorphic testing is instead of having an oracle or instead of having a property, we instead use these things called a metamorphic relation. And that's when we exercise the system. If we exercise the system in a different way, we should be able to know if the result for the first application or for the first test, if you will, should relate somehow to the second run. And actually a really great example that I just read earlier today when I was prepping for this is super duper basic, super duper simple, but I think it's the reflexive property in math. I might have that wrong. It's been a long time since I've studied those. Ditto. But if you think of it in a super duper basic scenario, if I have, let's say, a calculator app, and I put in 5 plus 4, let's say for some reason I don't know what the answer is going to be. But by the reflexive property, again, I think, by whatever that property is called, I know, since it's addition, I could put in 4 plus 5, and it would be the same. So instead of having a test that says 5 plus 4 equals 9, I have a test that says 5 plus 4 equals something. And the next test is, well, 4 plus 5 should equal that something. Okay. And so in this way, instead of knowing the output, I'm instead basically using the system to check itself. And that's a super duper simplistic example. Mm-hmm. Another one that's actually in this article that we're looking at now, one of the case studies I was able to, the whole thing was published without, having to go through a paywall or register or anything. Mm-hmm. I don't remember which one it was. Metamorphic testing for RESTful web APIs, actually.
Got it.
That was one it was. Yeah. So the example that they use is web APIs, and the one that really clicked for me was, I think it was the Spotify API. They would do a search for a term, and that returns a set of data. Well, if you sort that search, you should get equivalent but not equals? You should get the same data but in a different order.
Right. Yeah. Equivalent.
Yeah. If you do a filter, you should get a subset of that data. If you broaden your search term, you should get a superset of that data. So it's when we start looking at these more complex scenarios where it's like, hey, if I Google search automated testing,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's going to come back in that search. It's probably changing all the time based on when people create websites and when they update the text. But if I do that search and then I sort it or I filter it or I do a more specific search, let's say Selenium automated testing,
Mm-hmm.
or a less specific search, maybe software testing, I can start to compare these results against each other to look for some interesting behavior. So in my mind, I don't think it's the end all be all. Hey, this is the future of testing, but I do think it could totally serve an important, be a very important tool when we start looking at very complex or opaque systems.
Got it. And I think some of it, they kind of describe it under that motivation section, and I think it's the same problem that you hit on there. Is it's similar to the property-based testing, except for in property-based testing, you know something about your inputs, right? You're providing them. Where in this case, the inputs are coming from the system as well as the result of exercising the system,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's just a matter of effectively declaring the relationship between those two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that article I mentioned, though, RESTful APIs one,
Mm-hmm.
they actually do a really good job of laying out the metamorphic relationships that they identified as being important for their tests, which may be different depending on the sort of system that you're testing.
Right.
They went through, I think there were a dozen of them, things like equivalent, equals, subset, superset, union, all sorts of different things
Right.
that you could use to compare these results.
Right. Basically, I mean, so again, it's been a long time since I've done math as well, but it boils down to a lot of the mathematical set theory relationships, right?
Hmm.
I've got a set of, I think, because I got the PDF in front of me, a set of three things. They've got track A, B, C, and then various tests against it.
Hmm.
Okay. I mean that I think that mostly makes sense to me. Do we? Well, we'll come back to that in a minute. So, article has a bunch of case studies,
Hmm.
and then is there anything more in here? I think this kind of falls down here. Again, if people haven't seen this before, don't feel bad. Something in the back of my mind makes me suspect that some people may have done something like this and just not really been able to put a term to it.
Hmm.
But I think having sort of a well-defined blueprint, I guess,
Hmm.
makes a lot of sense. So, with that sort of in mind, and actually, hang on before I get too off in the woods. One obvious application of this comes from artificial intelligence. So I'm just gonna drop one more link in the chat for people who are interested. So basically being able to verify your machine learning algorithm is behaving the way you expect, right? Because that again, you go through and train up your model, and then you have to know, is it working, right? And figuring out how that works. So this article kind of dives into that and how they applied it. So if people are interested in that, that is also another interesting one. So I think I'm going to leave this guy kind of floating around, and then I think we'll dive into maybe just trying to write some code with this and see what happens. So if people are interested, I'm going to be working out of this repo here. It's a simple helper repo. I use it to generate the release documentation every time I put out a material design and XAML release. So that's sort of the base, but we're going to ignore all of that code, and I'm just using it because it's already conveniently set up to do GitHub integration. That way we've got a source of data where there's a lot of data, and we can query stuff out of it. That makes sense. Okay, so where are you thinking we want to start with this, Mike? And I'm realizing I set this thing up like just to invoke a main method, but I'm wondering if we should deviate from that and just go and do a unit test. Does that make more sense?
I think so, yeah.
So why not? Let's go through and add some tests. So, new project. Do you care about the testing framework? MS Test okay?
Yep, that is fine.
Great. So, GitHub helper tests. Great. Create. I'll name it this way so that if I ever do add CI, it'll get picked up. Okay, so there's going to be a couple things that we're going to have to do really quick. So I'm going to just, in the interest of doing this, public static class GitHub. And I'm going to just quickly go and grab that same OctoKit library that I was using on the other side. Just bring that in real quick. Is your screen following along as I'm moving around, Mike?
No, I have to know where to go, but I saw the project. I saw the project pop up. So
okay, I was going to say, I think if you right-click and just follow my user, you'll probably stick with my cursor wherever it goes. I think. I don't know that for a fact, but
oh, follow participant. There we go.
Yeah, I think that lets you, because I'm going to bounce around a little bit here. Wait. This is, oh, that's fun. Trying to decide how I do this, if it's worth going through that. I'm ultimately just going to wrap this thing off in a new little bit, but I think what I'm just going to do is this, right? I think I'm just going to do, and sure, let's just add a reference back to the other project. I don't want to think too hard about this. Great. And I guess I can put this back if I'm going to do a hard reference. So I'm going to move this guy out here in just a minute. And more importantly, I'm just going to go and hard code the key that we need for the access token elsewhere. So we don't have to, do this. And then I'm not going to check it in, unlike what I did last week, where I promptly and repeatedly exposed my key and got really, really good at regenerating my key. I really, really, really don't want to do that over and over and over. So we're going to just move you off into your own file. I'm going to open you up, and I'm going to move you off the screen. There's the kicking step that I always forgot to do beforehand. And if I remember right, I've got my other file sitting over here too. And look, you two can be friends. Great. So I need magical access token. Great. Okay, so GitHub client gets GitHub. Wow.
Well, people are watching, so,
I know. And I'm starting to now question my GitHub should probably, sorry, my OCD is going to bother me if I don't fix that H. Yes, please. Yeah, great. I'm a little confused because my what? Where did my file go? It was literally just there a moment ago.
Huh.
That's a new feature. So 1 second, open containing folder. And yeah. Undo. Nope. Okay. That's new and different.
I'm pretty sure I didn't delete it on accident.
I would Appreciate that, but I've never seen that happen before, so I'm going to just once again move you into your own file, drag you not onto the main screen, come over to here, just snag that little guy, right? Boom, boom, boom. Drop that in. Replace the access token with a hard-coded string. And put that guy in. Paste. Put something else on my clipboard so I don't accidentally hit paste on the other side because I've been known to screw that up. Okay. So, and then I should make it public so it stops whining. There. Okay. We have a client. What are we going to test? Or how do you want to test?
Well,
because I think this is where the interesting, or I should say, where the rubber meets the road, and where we actually have to
yep.
Go through.
We've got lots of options. Are we pointed to the test tools repo?
I believe so. Well, yes and no. We're pointed at no repos at the moment, but we can be pointed at whatever you would like. You want to use the IntelliTech test tools one?
Yeah, I might as well. I've been doing a lot of work in there this year.
Great. Okay, so I think, depending on what calls you want to make, I think it's client repository get, and it wants an owner of IntelliTech, and it wants a repo name of test tools. All right, so var repo. Let's see, asynchronously things, async task. Sure, great. Okay, so in theory, we have a repo now, don't we? Okay. So, I guess, and this is where again, the metamorphic testing bit gets a little weird. I guess we really need to just decide on what exactly we want to verify. Do we want to just verify pull requests?
That's what I was trying to decide. It's like we've got multiple different data points we could look at: pull requests, commits, collaborators, files. Like, what's going to be most fun?
Let's do issues. I think because we've got a lot more criteria that we can work with on issues, right? Because you've got open issues, you've got closed issues, you've got authors. The set's big enough that we can, or I should say, it's big enough to be interesting, but small enough that if we wanted to grok the whole thing, it's not a big deal.
I like it.
Cool. So, what do we want to do? Just pull back all issues to begin with?
Yep.
I think so. Let's see the client issue, and I think what we want get all for repository. Hey, look at that. And actually, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just do this. Private const string owner gets IntelliTech. I should spell our company's name correctly because that would be embarrassing. Let's see. Private const string repo name. All right.
Yep.
So there's that. Okay. So I don't know if we actually need this because we can just query in directly with that information. So we can do, let's see, owner. We can do, well, actually though, do we want open and closed? Well, here. We're going to try this. I don't know what this is going to return. So I know on some of these APIs you have to pass in a request object if you want to get like the closed things too. So that gets more interesting, I guess. So
let's run it and find out.
I might have to go turn that off real quick. I'm sorry. That is driving me absolutely bonkers. The resharper settings, that is. Let's see, extensions, resharper, options. Where is this stupid type name stuff? Boy. Annotate, TypeScript. Let's see, name perhaps. Let's see, editor. This is, I don't necessarily know where it is. I want to go turn it off. I want to go turn it off. I just don't know where it is. Show parameter name hints. I think I don't like inlay hints at all. There we are. That's what I wanted. Okay, all inlay hints off.
Nice.
Okay, so there's that. So this will just get us all issues. Well, we think will get us all issues. So, it is worth noting we might have to be mildly careful. GitHub only allows you to query, or I should say, only allows you to do 5,000 queries an hour.
All right.
Believe it or not, that's actually a surprisingly easy thing to hit because some of these things actually chew up more than one.
Oh, gotcha.
So you technically get 5,000 API calls, but with this client library, sometimes one method invocation is multiple API calls.
Gotcha.
So thinking.
I do want to point out real quick that in VS Live Share, I really appreciate that when you debug, I get to see your stack and locals and all that.
Yes. It is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I did not pay attention to what that was, but that gave me back 14 issues. I think
That's probably sounds like just open.
it's interesting that it gave me 14 when I see 13 in the GUI.
Oh. Well then.
That's real. Oh wait, is there a second? Maybe there's a second page, and I'm just. Now I'm curious where the set differs.
Right.
If we find a bug in this API right here, I'm going to be shocked.
Right.
This is not supposed to be the way this goes, right? 29, 30, 34, 36, 48, 49, 52, 53.
There's no 61. What? Okay, so what's issue 61?
Is it giving back the open PR? It's giving back the open PR with it.
Oh.
That's what's happening. Because
all right.
Because they share the same IDs. Interesting.
Huh.
Interesting. Okay.
Good to know.
Kind of feels weird. What does 61 have on it that would... Does it tell us anything about if it's a PR or not? Doesn't seem to.
Yeah.
I mean, you could kind of divine it based on the URL stuff of whether it's, pull. That is interesting.
Yeah, but otherwise, there's no.
I don't know. So here's the other part that gets me is I don't necessarily know if this is expected or not, right? Because, maybe this is intentional. Because I know these things very intentionally share the same backing source for tracking it. Because when you open a PR, it effectively uses this to track the comments and everything on it. And maybe that's the reason for it. I think for now we'll just assume that it's correct. Okay, so if we want to get to all, I think we got to let's change this up, right? Because I think this is going to be mildly problematic. So I think we have to do this first. I'm going to change. Let's see. I'm going to just collapse Solution Explorer. I don't need that open. Okay, so owner there and repo name here because I don't think there was an overload here that took the. Because usually there's an options or a request class.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, but all the ones that take in options want a repo ID, which means we have to have the repo ID.
Yep.
But we now have that. So now we go repo ID, right? And then we can go new API options, and I think this gives me. No, that's just paging stuff. So it's going to be on a request object. So that's going to be repository issue request. And we're going to refactor this out. There we go. So var request gets, I think this guy actually has the set of all of our data, right?
Perfect.
I think if we look, let's see, labels, mentions, source, state. That sounds more like what I want. All. Because I'm pretty sure most of the API calls from when I've worked with the GitHub stuff is going to default to just like opened type things.
Okay.
Which it's probably a reasonable default. Very rarely do you want to like query everything since the dawn of time.
Right.
But in that case, that's exactly what we want. So let's see. That should do that. That should do that. So debug again. Let's see what comes back. Okay. Okay. So now we get back 63 things, which is a lot. But I've got a bunch of opened and closed items in here.
Yep.
Which sort of makes sense. Okay. We're going to assume that's correct.
Works for me.
Okay, so how do we want to go through and structure this? Because I assume what we want to do is, in the interest of not like pounding on the API and burning through this as fast as we can, maybe we should some sort of setup that grabs and caches these issues, and then we can do follow-up requests.
Yep.
If that seems good to you, so
absolutely. And kind of in my head as I was thinking about this, that seems reasonable to do, because I mean, if we were to refetch these, or that initial set every single time, that it just seems like an unnecessary number of calls.
I completely agree. So I'm trying to think of what I want this guy. I think in the interest of simplicity right now, right, I think I just write a simple static method that gives me back a read-only list of issues, right? Because, I mean, yes, there's ways to optimize this. Get all issues, and it'll take in an GitHub client. And we'll just dump this in, right? And then we don't have to think, poof, that, so we get rid of this. Oh, and I suppose I have to make it an async method. Is there a, hey, resharper? Thank you.
Nice.
That's what I wanted right there. I was wondering if that was built in. Get all issues. I love it when resharper just does the code that I want. Okay. Perfect.
Nice.
Hold on. We got to actually return the value, I guess. Return issues. No, there's that. We might refactor this one more time when we get to running multiple tests, because I suspect I don't want to retrieve this every time.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. Cool. So I guess we've got a couple things we could try, right? So, so one, we could so if we wanted to continue on the same, I guess, issues API, like we could very easily go through and do sorting.
Yeah, sorting. Created by. I don't remember. Is there an assign to? I was just assigned myself.
Yeah, there is an assignee and a creator, but I think the problem is at least in this repo, I don't think we've necessarily assigned a lot of things to people explicitly.
Gotcha.
Which may end up biting us a little bit.
Makes sense.
I mean, that's fine, but.
So yeah, I mean the immediate, super straightforward one would be created by a person or sorted by some value.
Right. Well, I mean, if we want to filter down, right? So.
Yeah, or close versus. Yeah, I was just. Yeah,
I mean, really, right? So.
Yep.
Let's see. It's data row, isn't it? or yeah.
Yeah.
And so if I
Depending on
just
what
do
comes
item
up.
state filter open and closed, right? Because in
Yep.
theory, I can do this as a single test,
Run the same. Yep.
and I can do item state filter. We'll call it filter, right? And we'll just pass this in.
Yep.
And we should give our unit test a better name because test method 1 is not overly descriptive. How about filtering returns subset?
Yeah.
That if we
That's
go back to
descriptive.
that initial article, and I'm just gonna, for the sake of making sure, since my chat doesn't stay up forever, if anybody's interested, the metamorphic testing that we're looking at, the relationship in this case, subset. And so let's take.
Oh, you'll want to change that second data row to closed.
Thank you. This is why we pair. And I realize I am an idiot, and I actually do want that line of code. So closed, right? So I want to get all issues, and then I want to do this again, right?
Yep.
Oh, I need the repo ID. Trying to decide the best way to do this without hating my life.
Right.
You know what?
I mean, if we wanted quick and easy, we could debug real quick and just grab it and hard code it.
Look at that. That sounds like a great idea. And we'll even const long. Alright, so I'll put this in real quick. Boom. Okay. And then what we are going to do is change this guy out to actually, you know what? Let's do this. No, so we still change it, right? But I think what I do is rather than having this be const,
I see, yep.
we'll just go and look it up, right? And we are not dealing with error cases right now because you should deal with error cases.
Yes.
Always deal with error cases. Don't do like I'm doing. Bad. And because I can't help it, I have to. I see race condition, but whatever. Okay. Test running in parallel. Race condition introduced.
Yep.
Okay, so let's figure out how do we want to actually do this now. So we basically need to compare these items, right? I think. Let's see. I believe all of these have an ID on them, right? I think.
I believe so, yeah.
Great. So we could just do a set of the IDs. So how about
MS Test it's been a little bit since I've used MS Test, but I know like XUnit has an assert that compares lists. MS Test might have the same.
It does. It has a collection assert on it.
Okay.
The problem being, well, I guess it does have is subset of, right? Okay, so all issues select x.id to list, and I'm gonna just break this onto multiple lines because this is gonna get too big, especially at this font size. So that's the superset. So we need this to be issues select, right? X.id. And to list. Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, filtering return subset. Run tests. And I realize I just hit run rather than debug, so we're going to just see what happens. Huzzah! We win. This is remarkably easy, though I am noticing if you have a full set like this.
Uh-huh.
If you have a full set, it does feel like you almost want to cache it. And I do wonder about things like, well, I guess you would never test in an environment where something else would potentially be modifying your data, right?
Preferably not. We have run into that at a couple of clients, one or two, and it's I don't have a good answer for how to handle that. Yeah. At one of our clients, they're a bigger enterprise, so their systems are set up to facilitate a lot of traffic. So in that particular client, like, we query for every single little thing. Like, I just got done writing a couple of tests where I think I query 10, 11, 12 times in a single test just for different points of data. And it's okay because it's like, we expect that there's traffic. But yeah, I mean, definitely best practice or best environment setup would be, let's have our own test environment where the data is not going to change out from underneath us.
Don't mind me. Semaphore slim. Just, I'm twitching and I have to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. What do you? Oh. Wait. And I'm gonna just do this. Do this. Actually, you know what? The try finally is really not necessary. It probably is in production grade code, but in this case, if things blow up, they're inside of unit tests, and I kind of want that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, fail fast. Boom. So let's do this, and I'm just gonna, because no one's ever been bitten by having a cache of items sitting around, right?
Never, ever.
For those people who haven't heard me say it before, I usually refer to cache as failure point here. So, because that's generally what happens. Issues is null. We'll go and look them up. All right. What are you squawking at? Oh. You want to be able to set it. Okay, fine.
Details.
Details. Oh, just... Okay, I feel like I'm bike shedding here. Okay, what are we testing now?
Well,
now that I had to go and do threading.
All right, so we've got a... did we run that test, by the way?
We did, but I will happily run it again because it executed very quickly, and I don't know if it executed in parallel or not. It was kind of fast.
I say that might be one oversight in live share. I never saw Test Explorer update.
Oh. That is a good point.
Okay.
Do you see it now?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll just rely that if something fails, you'll tell me.
Got it. And this is something that, so I know you can't see it here, but in Test Explorer right now, even though we have these 2 data rows, it shows 3 results, one for each of the individual items, and then one that's the summation of the 2. So I know in the past this has confused people, and when we asked, this was an intentional design decision. And I gave the feedback that design was confusing. And so far, nothing's changed.
Right.
So that's all I can say for certain.
All right. So let's see. Do we want to stick with issues or move on? Because I mean, I'm looking at the API docs right now, and they've got a lot of stuff we could look at just with issues.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm more interested in is let's see about, like, we could stick with issues, but I'm thinking let's not do necessarily a subset, right? I'm thinking we do something a little different.
Okay.
Let's do a different relationship, because I think that's more interesting, right?
Oh, fair enough. So we could do a not equals. Just off the top of my head, I could think of. Well, see, this is the part where I'm a little hazy on metamorphic testing. Is it a valid test for me to query for all the issues I've reported and all the issues, let's say Mark has reported, and make sure that they're not the same? Does that tell us anything interesting?
So that actually raises a good question, and I think the answer is yeah. I should have left that. Hold on, let me grab that one where you did this one, because that white paper that you cited, I thought I saw disjoint as let's see, equivalence, equality, subset,
Disjoint.
which we just did subset, disjoint, where intersects amend sources, source and follow-up output should be empty. So this pattern is applicable when query results can be divided into disjoint partitions, right?
With no item in common. Okay, yeah.
I mean, this seems fairly simple, right?
Sweet,
Right?
let's do that.
Because like they were saying 2D and 3D. So I mean, we could stick with something simple, right? So we could just say, well, shoot, I can't resist the urge to refactor because, right? Because I am. I want this. I want this signature right here, but I want it to be this, and I'm going to just move you down, and we're going to go with an overload that takes in an item state filter, right? And we'll call it filter, and we're just going to grab all of you, and we're just going to blindly fire this guy off. You're going to pass in a filter, and you're going to return. Right? And now we've got something that's much simpler to work with. This guy just becomes get all issues. I don't like the fact that we're just using stuff, but whatever. The whole point is testing metamorphic stuff. And, got to call the right overload. Okay, so there's that. And I think I can just call into hit here, right? Await, get all issues, client filter. And look at that, or just keep deleting code. Okay, but now we want to do this one, right? What do we call this? Open and closed issues are disjointed. Maybe?
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yep.
So let's see. Var open issues gets await. Get all issues client open. And we'll do closed. And I'm going to leave them as var because then I don't separate my lines. And so collection assert are not equal, right?
The thing I
Well,
don't
not
know,
equal isn't the same as not as disjointed.
right? I was just gonna say the thing I don't know is does not equal. Is it gonna match on? We almost need
Is not
like a
subset.
not any or
Well, so you can kind of get it. Well, so well, here's what you can do, right? Because in both cases, well, var open IDs gets new hash set int, right? Or I think it's going to be long, and we'll just pass it open issues, and once again just grab the ID off of it, right?
Mhm.
Oh, it is an int. Lovely.
Oh.
Note to self: the API is going to have problems when some poor guy, because I believe hash set has is superset overlaps set equals. Because I think what you could do is you could do an intersect between these two and then assert that they're right. Because if you intersect, oh, actually, there's an intersect here.
Oh.
Got it. Okay, so here's what you do. Collection assert
Uh-huh.
empty, or is it just on the assert class? Assert is assert. Assert is true.
Huh?
Open issues, select x.id, intersect with closed issues.id, or I'm sorry, intersect closed issues, select, and I'm going to have to, I already have to move this and make it cleaner. Dot any, right? Because grab the open issues, intersect it with the closed issues. If there are none, okay, let's see if it passes. Ooh, failure.
Interesting.
Let's see. Let's see. Repositories -1 issues was not found.
Oh.
Oh. That is because I called get all issues and it doesn't use any of my other stuff. Well, that's not a good
Oops.
thing. Okay. I hate doing this. I feel like I end up writing so much. Oh, actually. Hey, ReSharper. Let's see. What is the refactor extract method? Yeah, method, please. Get repo ID. Don't know where you just put it. Oh, right below. Perfect. Thank you, ReSharper. I appreciate the help. Let's see. Client. There, and that means we just do this into here, right? Boom.
Nice.
And actually, I think we take it as this doesn't quite get us around it because we want this actually down here. And this down around here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because ultimately it's going to call into here. Long repo ID gets, oh wait, get repo ID. Boom, 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 boom. What do you... Fix that in a minute. And then this guy uses the local rather than the cache. Great, 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 great. Async task. Sorry about all this boilerplate. I do apologize. I realize that's not what we set out to do. Return repo ID. I'm not entirely sure what this is going to do, so we're going to run it. I think this works now, but... Okay, so that failed now for a different reason, but I'm more interested if this deadlocks when I run it through here. Okay, no it doesn't. Perfect. Couldn't remember how it handled that. So, in that case... I definitely want to do this guy up here. Okay, so that fixes that all the way through there. Okay, we still have this issue of assert. So let's grab this. Our intersection. Boom. And let's get a list of these things, right?
Sounds good.
And then let's just verify this thing is correct. So, I think our assertion was just backwards, right?
Oh.
See, this is why you should break
Right?
things onto multiple lines so that you don't make mistakes like that.
Right.
It's not like anyone's ever screwed up and gotten their assertions backwards before.
Never ever.
So before you fix your code, you should read your code. Okay. The test runner is thinking very hard. I'm wondering if I did deadlock it, though. No. I think I might have.
Ooh, right.
Yeah, well, that's what I was a little surprised that wait async, because normally wait async is going to empty the semaphore, right? So it's going to get access to the key, and then it's going to go into here, which is going to try to get again, and then it's going to lock on itself. Because the problem is I effectively have two methods that all want to call the same thing at the same time, and I really only want one going at a time. The problem is when there's nested calls, I think what we do is we just do this, right? So we only lock around the client. I think if we just do this, it fixes it, right? And then just boom, boom, boom. Something more like that. Let's try that. Hey, that's looking better. Green lights all the way across.
Nice.
I know you said you couldn't see them, but trust me.
I appreciate the announcement.
Woot, woot, woot. So this really doesn't seem that hard, honestly. This seems actually...
Yeah, it really doesn't. It's like when we first started to go into this, like all the different possibilities like was kind of overwhelming, but as we started just talking through some of the different examples, it's like, different possibilities, it's like, this actually, like this is actually kind of straightforward. It's just a slightly different way of thinking about it.
Yeah. I guess I'm also wondering now, too, where else to apply this. Because this would be... Because I know we had talked before, and I was wanting to do something fancy with, like, UI testing for, like, the material design demo app. Here, You can't see my screen, so that won't help you if I pull it up. But here's what I can do. Here's what I can do. I have the power. So if I do this, right, start sharing,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, yeah, it doesn't.
Oh,
Okay, so you now see my screen.
yes.
Sweet. Because and maybe it might be worth talking through some of these because we could keep going down some more of these metamorphic relationships, but it seems like if it's at least the examples that are just set theory of get a
Mm-hmm.
set of things, do a set theory operation on another set of things,
Mm-hmm.
but your first set was done. So here's my thought, right? So this library is largely just themes. Now
Mm-hmm.
there's some custom controls and whatnot built into here. Uh, for example, the obvious thing is like this hamburger menu and this flyout, right? Those are not default WPF controls.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously a couple custom things to support stuff like that. But the question comes is how do you go through and like test these? So
Mm-hmm.
we've started writing unit tests on some of the logic in the custom controls because that can be easily unit tested. But
Mm-hmm.
what can't be tested is effectively the bulk of the library, which is all of the styles and looks, right? But there's been enough
Right.
bugs that I'm almost wondering. So, for example, we've got all of this stuff, right? But you can come in here, and actually, one of the guys who might end up pairing with me next week helped build out this beautiful thing. Um, but even something simple like this, right? Like, how do you know that this
Mm-hmm.
worked?
Right. It,
And it
it's
seems like, and I'm wondering if you could do this with images,
like.
right? Because
Mm-hmm.
capturing these things as a screenshot is not terribly complex.
Mm-mm.
And the things without like you might have to put a delay on it because you'll notice like the click. I don't know if you can see it, but there's kind of a little rippley thing that pops up when you click there. Um, it's
I'm.
almost like I feel like I could just capture
Yeah.
screenshots and then do some assertions, right? If
So
you,
I'm almost wondering if you need to go that far, and not knowing how this is coded underneath the covers.
mm-hmm.
I mean, outside of XAML, I'm wondering if you could just capture the XAML and compare the light versus the dark, because I'm guessing theoretically the only thing that should change is like a color property or like a hue property or something like that.
Well, but therein lies the problem. Is none of these here, and actually we can switch over here, right? Like, oh wow, note to self. These buttons are really hard to see in dark theme, um, and they may not show very much here on any of these. Um, but most of what's going to change
Oh,
on them, they're all just going to have like the background color on the like
gotcha.
is just going to be a dynamic resource, right?
Okay.
And so the toggle between light and dark isn't actually part of the like for I think that it was easier to see on the color tool. Like this text here, right? The
Hmm.
the color change here where it's going from white to dark, the this guy actually has no change to his code himself. There's a
Gotcha.
dynamic resource at the window level and the thing that the dynamic resource points at is what's getting swapped.
Okay.
So I don't, and that's the part where it gets really hard. Is I don't know how to actually verify, because
Uh-huh.
ultimately the bug that I'd love to catch is finding areas where things didn't toggle correctly, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because that's really what we're looking for, and we have this problem actually on a client right now. So we've got an iOS app, right? iOS 13. Apple decides, okay, we're going to go and we are going to bestow dark mode upon our users because,
Hmm.
you know, we've conceded. Yes, Google's was right. It's a great feature. Let's implement it. So they add it, and by default, all iOS apps opt into dark mode.
Oh.
Yeah, by default.
Oh
Now
wow.
you can go through and opt out, but that
Hmm.
means you had to go and make a change, right? So if you
Right.
do nothing, you get opted in, and it's not as horrible as it sounds, right? Because
Okay.
if people are using just the standard styling and default controls, It just works. Where it
Okay.
falls apart is the moment that somebody has put in any sort of color codes. Because that means
Gotcha.
you've now explicitly set something that may or may not jive when they start changing out some of the other colors.
Right.
So, and that's the problem that they were in. And so ultimately, this sort of testing would have been really, really nice, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
or would it? Because I'm still tryrying to think. Like, because if I take these two images, right, and
Right. I was just gonna
diff
say,
them.
like, what? Yeah. What would that look like? I'm trying to picture my brain or my head.
Oh, what that ends up playing out like?
Yeah.
That could be
So if
kind of
we
fun to write real quick.
right.
Do you want to see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Because because we could do it on this page here and see how it works. So okay, so we're gonna skip over the whole capturing screenshots bit, right? And I'm just gonna capture some images. So, got to make sure we're in the same state in both of them. So, and I'm gonna get my mouse off, and I kind of want to move that focus rectangle out. That'll work. I guess it doesn't matter as long as the focus rectangle is in the same spot. What does it matter, right? Okay. So, okay, we'll have it there. So, let's see. Print screen there, and I'm going to... do I have anything other than Paint? Nope. Nope. Note to self. Need to install something other than Paint. Okay, so there's the light screenshot. Alt. Print screen. So for anybody who hasn't seen it before, Alt Print Screen will capture just the window. Yes, I'm aware that things like Windows S are built into Windows 10 now. Deal with it. Okay. So we got those. We'll just do it right here, right? Because we already got this stuff going.
Yep.
Okay, so step one, we need a NuGet package because that's how all great solutions start. So browse, and we'll do OpenCV sharp. For people who haven't worked with OpenCV, OpenCV sharp is, or I should say OpenCV is sort of the standard by which all image processing libraries are measured. They have long since been the leaders of everything. They get low points for being usable and simple, but there's a wealth of information out there on it. And
Nice.
OpenCV Sharp is just an auto-generated C# wrapper. Okay, test method, public, I think just void. I don't think we need to do anything asyncy. Foo, sounds great.
Yep.
Okay, so step one, we should save these images somewhere, right? So we're just going to save these guys out, and it's important that we save them in a reasonable format. And I think we'll just go with 24-bit bitmap. Let's see, GitHub helper. We should name them something that will make sense. So how about light? Great, go away. Give me the other one. And we'll save you as, again, 24-bit bitmap, because I don't want to deal with like weird color conversion stuff. Yes, we could, but that's a lot more code, and I don't want to think. So var light image gets new. Is it new mat, or is there a static on it? No, it's CV2. I am read. There we are.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
So again, low points for being able to do that because you just kind of had to have divined that information or looked up a tutorial. So we're going to just, again, in the interest of doing this, let's see, we're going to load up light.bitmap. Boom. We'll do dark.bitmap. And then we want to, let's see, what do we want to do? We want to effectively diff them. So I think, let's see, what is that? Calculates the per element absolute difference between the two array elements. Perfect. Something like that.
Oh.
And yes, I am very aware that I should be disposing of all of these objects. So these are all, every OpenCV object is a C# wrapper over an unmanaged thing, so you really should be doing something. We have C# 8. We won't be bad. So using mat diff image gets new mat, right? Boom, done. And unlike normal sane things, once you start dealing with unmanaged stuff, little things like instantiating to the right values just don't matter as much anymore. Let's see, CV2. That is not what I wanted.
I was
diff
very
image.
confused there for a second.
Okay, so run. As you can see, this is horribly complex and also blows up in your face. Let's see, what are you complaining about now? DLL not found. Huh? What? I am confused. Okay, so 1, rebuild. Let's see here, because this is going to be... I'm just going to drag this guy over here and take a quick peek-see at what is in here, because I would expect to find OpenCV sharp. Okay.
There it is.
Let's try this one more time. It could be the unit test runner.
Oh, right.
If it's launching this into a different place. So
Yeah.
let's just not fight with it for the moment, and we'll just put it up here. All right. Boom, 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 boom. It's also worth noting I haven't actually used the 4x version of the library, so I'm not entirely sure if there's any gotchas with it. The API is, at least for what I care about, is very similar to the 3x one, because I've done a bunch with the 3x and the 2x. So let's just go here, change that. I wonder why this thing says GitHub Helper 2.
Oh.
Oh, I know why.
Did you finish your rename?
No, it has to do with what I renamed in my launch settings. Let's see here. Need to not be a moron. Okay, so let's fire that off. There we go. So we got past problem 1. It's going to load, or is it going to just blow up in my face? Unable to load.
Huh.
This does make me wonder if it's an issue. Net 462, right? This is the wonderful thing about the new C# stuff. It's like, hey, I want to see if the problem is .NET Core.
Let's change.
Let's just flip that over here, right? What are you squawking about? Noble's still on. What? Noble isn't a... We're just going to build and make sure this thing works. It's not a... Oh, my word.
Ooh.
Oh, there's implicit language version. What is it called? Resharper, save me real quick. What is the language version check? Actually, maybe we just bump it up. 471. You happier now? I know. Go re-import the universe real quick for me. I know. I just changed out the whole fundamental rules by which you play by. It's like, hold on. I gotta go reload everything. Gotta go unzip some nougats.
Ooh.
Build. This is the part where I find out that I don't have 471 installed. Oh my word. This was supposed to be an easy thing to demo.
Oops.
It's becoming less easy as we go. Yeah, so here's the thing. This is your implicit language versions. So if you're targeting blah, you automatically get XYZ. That's what I want. Lang version. Thank you. So I'm wondering if I just don't have that, but lang version 8.0.
Oh.
There, you happier now? Look at that. Boom. Because you don't get all C# 8 features if you go and target full framework. But in our case, the stuff that I'm using isn't any different. Okay. Load DLL. I think that's throwing an exception if it jumped to there. Because that's the generated code.
Oh, man.
It must be... Okay. One more thing, and then I promise I'm going to give up and stop. Because we don't have to continue down this path. Let's see. Build. Platform target. Ah, ha, ha. I wonder if that was it. I wonder why it was defaulting like that. I just love how Visual Studio doesn't have support for the new CS Proj format. Okay, so any CPU, please work. No, you are really, really, really unhappy. I wish I knew which of the dependencies you were missing.
Huh.
Let me just check and make sure I'm not doing something stupid. Oh. You think this line right here is the key?
Right.
Reading OP.
Oops.
Sigh, sigh, sigh. Let's see. What is the difference between here and here? All-in-one package for Windows users.
Hey.
It has the two dependencies. Oh, so what you're saying is I should have just installed this and not been a moron.
That's super obvious.
Well, lesson learned. This is probably why they had a major version rev, because they restructured how their packages were done and figured they were going to do it in a nice, sane way. And yeah, that only works when people read the directions, which clearly I am too stupid to do. So we're going to take this guy out and just let the other one have preference. Okay, so there's that. There's that. We're going to try again. I suspect we could go back to .NET Core now, too. Oh, look, we loaded an image.
Yay!
Show me the image. Okay, well, you didn't want to show me the image.
Ooh.
That's fine. Blah, blah, blah. Size, width. Oh, so the output image didn't have the same size?
Let's
just check that real quick, because that...
Yeah.
That would be a simple fix. Diff image. Yeah, you have nothing. So let's just make sure this guy loaded up. Oh, that's probably the problem. The loaded images are 0 by 0 according to this. That doesn't seem right. Let's just confirm.
Will it do that if the image isn't in the spot it's expecting?
Well, it'll do that if the images are 0 kilobytes.
Ah.
So, what the heck, Paint? So we're going to go ahead and kill execution here. So I suspect that if I were to, say, double-click on this image...
Probably wouldn't be much in it.
It'll...
Wait, what?
Hey.
What?
I wonder if this thing's holding onto a file handle.
Oh, Paint. Oh.
Okay, so hypothetically, I'm going to launch one more time and just make sure that the light one shows.
Okay. But I mean, like, I'm not the only one confused by what just happened, right?
You are
like,
not.
I watch you take the screenshots.
Right. Okay, so the light image now loads. The dark image. What the heck? Okay, let's try this one more time. Conveniently, still open. Alt. Print screen. I am losing. This is why I need to go install something else. This is why Paint not the best tool for the job. Dark. We're gonna overwrite that. Save.
Do you want to overwrite?
Yeah, very confident. We're gonna close. We're gonna check here, right? That looks like a file.
Well, that was your problem, obviously. You didn't test that the file saved correctly.
I clearly. Okay, so light image,
All right.
size. Dark image, size. Diff image, currently
Perfect.
0, which is fine, but, step over. Diff image has stuff. Show me
Excellent.
image. That's going to be a problem. So here's what we're going to do. The thing is going to hang if we try to use the show call. So we'll just do I am right, and we'll just do something like diff, and I think it's path and then matrix. That's what MAT stands for, by the way, is matrix, because all images are inherently just return 0. No point in thinking. Okay, so we'll just run real quick. It goes and does its thing. Everyone's happy. Great. We'll go and check our output. We've got an image. Okay, so here's what you end up getting, right? When you diff it.
Yeah.
So, and this is where I feel like I could get some useful information out of this, right? Like, so there's a few things that are really obvious to me right out the gate that may not have been obvious from looking at the other one. Right? So it makes things where true type, I don't know if you're familiar with that term, where Windows renders your fonts with subpixel rendering, where it will put like the little red and blue to make your fonts more readable.
Oh, gotcha.
Shows up really shows up a lot because it gets really obvious to see it right here, right? Because that makes sense. We have up here, obviously, no true type. This is just straight up, right? Which, okay, we could dive into why that's the case, and you can kind of see it more on some of the other text, right? So it's really none of these texts have that problem. It's just up here. Looks like this guy probably rendered with true type, given that I'm seeing some colorization there. Because ultimately all we've done is diff all of the individual elements. So it takes the red channel, diffs it with the opposing pixel's red channel, and then writes that in. Right? So then you end up with something that kind of comes out looking like this. And so if we go back to what this looks like, it's interesting to me that this slider came out black.
Right?
That one surprises me. I almost wonder if we do like a grayscale comparison between the two. Like flatten them down.
That
That might be an interesting check. And this is where I keep feeling like I could do some reasonable testing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because fundamentally under the hood, it feels like metamorphic testing and some amount of like image manipulation plays
Right.
very well into each other, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
when we're working with sets of data, images are just other sets of data.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels like it could be a really powerful thing.
Yeah.
I'm a
I
little
mean,
surprised
we've
at
had
these.
we actually had a case that we potentially could have used that at one of our clients. They've got a GIS application, and part of this application, so is a map. And the company that makes it, there's no accessibility information, which is how a lot of the desktop testing tools work. And so we briefly explored like placing an object on the map and then taking a screenshot. We didn't go this route of make sure that the new screenshot and the old screenshot or the original, the new one would be a superset because it'd be the same image with this new feature or this new object they added on it. We
Right.
tried to go the route of take a screenshot at some point that looks like what we think it's going to look like when the test runs, and it never really worked out. This could have been a very interesting way to handle that,
Right.
because everything would have been the same except for this new thing that we put on the map.
Yep. Yep. And a lot of this stuff, it dives down into, like most like detection type stuff, work by getting down to a binary image at some level. And I'm wondering if some of the confusion here is because this isn't a binary image. One second. Let's try that real quick if you don't mind.
Okay. Sure.
Because now I'm really curious. Let's see. I think I can just do light image. What was it? CV something or another. CVT color. Great. Color conversion. Let's see. BGR to gray. So it is worth noting
Nice.
that on OpenCV, when it loads up images, by default, the RGB channels are actually internally stored BGR. So just something to be aware of if you go through, because once you start dealing with channel stuff, that actually matters. So nope. One more line down. Okay, so we're gonna do dark gray, and we'll do the dark color conversion, and then we'll do light gray, dark gray. I'm just really curious here because I think there was a couple diff options. It's interesting that I might have to poke around that API a little bit because I think there's other options available as well.
Okay.
So we'll just run that. Blah blah blah. Go back here. Reopen diff. So basically the same information, except for we've thrown away the. It still does interest me that this thing here, and maybe that makes sense.
Can we go back to the page?
Oh,
and
no,
flip
it
real
does
quick?
make sense. It makes perfect sense. Everywhere where there's black is okay. So this does
It's the
make
same?
sense because black is inherently 0, right?
Uh-huh.
And white is all bits on, 255. Right?
Uh-huh.
And so everywhere where you see white is something that has changed, and everywhere where you see black is where it
it's the
hasn't
same.
changed.
Yeah. Okay.
So that basically makes fairly good sense. And I mean, you can go through and figure out, like you can do. So what you can do is you can use these things as like template masks. and use them to effectively cut portions of your image out and figure out what changed and what didn't. That does pose an interesting question, though, of how do you know? You'd almost have to have a page with just the element you were interested in testing.
Right.
Interesting thoughts. Interesting thoughts. Interesting thoughts. Yeah, because that is interesting that goes through like that. Oh, and that's actually really funny. I just noticed that. So you've got this lighter gray circle here because this thing moved.
Nice.
Because on the dark
Right.
side it would have been on one
Yep.
side, and on light it's on the other.
Yep.
Interesting.
I'm
So
trying to think if there's a way that you could do this for a whole page, because looking at it, I can envision a test where, let's take that MD palette in the middle, for example, where we take we should be able to grab just a screenshot of that, flip to light, take the screenshot on light or dark, flip to the other one, take the screenshot, do the diff, and make sure that it's black. There's no difference. But looking at like the cover hex value little box up there, I could see, okay, that did change a little bit. So we could do some assertions around that, but doing it element by element seems super duper tedious.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of if there's a way we could do it for a whole page, and I think, I don't know if it's more compelling or not, but the second aspect is do it in a way where you don't have to manually build or specify the relationship for each new page. I don't know if there's some characteristic we could look for that just says, hey, go to a page, take the screenshot, flip it, take the other screenshot, and compare. At least, in this case.
Right, because once you get that difference, I think you do raise the correct question of what would that relationship be?
Yeah, and I can, like I said, I can pick it out for specific elements, but that's going to differ per page.
Right.
I'll have to. I would have to specify which elements are on the page. I guess that's probably the better way to word it. Is I know what it is per element. So for any page, I would have to specify the elements that are on the page to get it to work that way.
Right, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be this app per se to test, right? Because this thing's purpose is to just demo everything.
Right.
The other ones that get more interesting where I see this falling apart is something like these guys here, right? Where you've got animation. And and maybe in that case the screenshot's not the right solution, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is a weird case where I do want.
So here's a thought. Since we know how each element should act, and just looking at the diff, I could draw some conclusions. You having written a lot of this would probably be able to identify them quickly. Would it be something that we would specify, again, each element, hey, in light it should, or in light versus dark there should be no difference, or there should be a little bit of difference, or the exact opposite difference. I wonder if you could just write a test that goes to a page, and then you don't specify, you just say, give me all the elements on the page. And for each one of those, depending on what its type is, or its well, yeah, type for lack of a better word here,
Right.
whatever its type is, go do the relevant comparison that way. Because then it wouldn't matter the app. It wouldn't matter. I mean, the app would matter, but I mean, fundamentally, the actual comparisons, it wouldn't matter.
Right. You could effectively just iterate through all of them.
Uh huh.
For that matter, I could actually so we actually so let me just pull this over here real quick because we actually do have a list of them,
Okay.
right? So if I jump here, I've got a DevOps pipeline
Hmm.
that on every commit goes through and updates this wiki. There's the list.
Nice.
Like I've got a list of quite
Uh huh.
literally every control and every style for every control.
Uh huh.
And so
Yeah. So it wouldn't be trivial, but if we could say, hey, material design raise button
yep.
is the style's not going to change between light and dark. Okay, we know in that diff it's going to come back as black or zero or however CV2 represents that programmatically.
Yep.
So then if we grab one of those, whatever the type and property is in XAML, I'm so just to set expectations, I'm thinking about this in terms of using something like Windows Application Driver. It's a Microsoft tool for doing desktop testing. It's replacing or has already replaced actually coded UI. It differs from coded UI and like Test Stack White and some of the other tools out there via it converts your app into XML and then
Ah.
shops it off to Appium and Selenium. So you can do. So if you're familiar with web-based testing, you can be kind of familiar with this. So,
Gotcha.
so anyway, just to level set that, if I look for that button, all I would have to say is, okay, hey, this is a button tag or tag name, and then it's got maybe I don't know a property that says raised or however it looks when WinAppDriver converts it. So and then at that point, that should work. Would just have to take that list, program in the
Oh.
different properties to look for, and
Yeah.
then when app driver goes to a page of your app or a window
Mm-hmm.
of your app, it's gonna serve up this XML that's like button with property whatever or I don't know how like your scroll bars are, but one of the applications that we've tested for a client, the scroll bars are divs. That's how it's converted. So the div with property, I think it's like is scroll bar equals true.
Mm.
That's how I know it's a scroll bar. So that
Interesting.
theoretically could work.
Yeah. That is really interesting. I'm almost actually picturing rather than using this app, I almost want to have some sort of input file that contains, say, the control style that we want to test, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe underneath it some sort of like precondition setup for the window, like maybe window size, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then underneath that, a list of metamorphic relationships. Like, for example, doesn't change with dark or light theme, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Which I think
be,
would be it like an equals or an equivalent to go back to the terminology from that paper.
right, exactly. And I'm envisioning what we could do then is we wouldn't actually need to know anything about like from that input file we could have an app that just ingests
Mm-hmm.
it, right?
Yep.
It would have a window, it would set it to the appropriate size, it
Uh
would
huh.
put the element on the screen, it would
Yep.
screenshot it, and or I should say it would walk through each of the metamorphic relationships and do
Mm-hmm.
the screenshots that it needs, right?
Yep.
So it could go through and it could even screenshot the window before putting the control on there, just to have the effectively the baseline, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then drop it in and pull it out.
Mm-hmm. I think we should try and build that. I mean, not necessarily tonight, but
All right. In theory, I end my stream here by 11, and I don't know if we could build that out tonight.
I
But that I
I don't think
think
so.
like if you're up for it, I would love to go through and maybe one night just walk through the um, basics of setting up the UI tests. And
Mm-hmm.
again, whether we point it at this app or some other app,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not real picky, but I'd love to get basic UI test
Sure.
set up and have the framework there
Huh?
that we could start plugging into.
Yeah, totally.
Sweet. Because I think that would be really fun. It would be very interesting to try because
Right.
I think that could work really well. Now, obviously, I think there's some things that I just have to exclude from that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like one of these guys here. Though at the same
Right.
time, I don't know if I need to completely exclude them. Because I'm envisioning a couple fancy tricks. Like if we screenshot before we put the control on the page, then we add the control and screenshot again. The diff between those two gives us the control, specifically where it's
Yeah.
located on the image in pixels, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that gives us a lot. Some controls don't lend themselves well, like these flyouts. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, the drawer control, right? Because these things are all about opening and closing, right? So that
Right.
there would have to. I don't think this control specifically would lend itself well to this form of testing, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
we could maybe do like the drawer itself, but the content in it would, I think, would get tough.
right, and that's where it almost I don't know if the payout is worth it to go through and
Mm-hmm.
test it, or like for example these dialogues where they can pop up and do that. Now there may be something we can do with these dialogues, like for example, I would love to assert that the gray background gets put
Mm-hmm.
in, and
Mm-hmm.
I think there's alternate UI tests that would lend themselves well, like for example
Mm-hmm.
whether light dismiss is enabled or not, right? And then clicking
Right.
off should close. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if any of these things actually have light dismiss turned on. Doesn't look like it. And that's the other thing is these controls themselves. There's hierarchy stuff that goes along with each of these, but the, things like that I think would probably be better to just straight UI test versus metamorphic
Mm-hmm.
test.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the one thing that I'm not sure if I have a clear picture of yet is when do I do which, right?
Right. And that, I mean, yeah. I mean, yeah. I can think. There's been definite examples that I've encountered after reading those articles where I was like, yes, this would lend itself well.
Mm.
But then there's other examples I run into where it's like, well, would it though? So in one particular case, we've got a client that has I don't want to say large customer information system, but I mean it's fairly sizable. I want to say they've got 600,000 customers or something to that effect.
So
And
six figures.
mhm,
That's the least order of magnitude.
yeah, and there was a situation where I think there was a failure in prod actually, and they couldn't figure out why. And I after reading these articles had this thought. I was like theoretically, I'm not saying we should iterate through every 600,000 whatever customers, but theoretically we could grab a large subset of these customers. And again, same customer that's got query, but we can query for these customers, and as long as we aren't terrible in our queries, we're not going to wreck the database.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and in this case, and this is where it's kind of borderline, maybe just property testing. But it's like, what if I take one of these things that I know when I shove it into this web service, I'm going to get back a valid call. Um, Now, every single customer isn't going to have the same response from this web service because there's customer keys and a couple of other things that are going to vary per customer, right?
Right.
But there's parts of this response that should always be the same. And so it's like that right there. I could potentially leverage something like this where I make the call with like, you know, a known customer, not in prod, just for the record. make a call with his own customer, get the response back that I know maybe these properties should be the same, but then go back and iterate through, I don't know, 100,000 accounts and look for this failure they saw. But even that, actually, as I was talking about, it's like I know what the response is, so that probably wouldn't classify. So yeah, so it's like,
Well,
I
but I
guess,
don't know. Like, so I guess the question is, I think it sort of depends on how you write that test, right? Because if the thing that you're looking for in the response is something that you hard code, then yeah, that's more of an Oracle-based test. But
yeah,
if the thing in the response is something like if you're basing it against
hmm
some known customer response,
hmm
like I want to check the metadata element, for example, right?
right,
And I want the assertion that I want to make is that all metadata elements should have the same keys,
hmm
right?
yeah, and
And I don't
that's
know what those keys are, nor do I
right,
care, right? I just want to assert that
right,
they all match.
right, yeah, and that's kind of the struggle I was having with that particular case. Um, of like, oh, would it be considered metamorphic testing? Would it not? But the idea behind it, I think, was totally valid. But yeah, then like you said, we've got other cases where it's like, no, this an oracle here would be fine.
Right.
Um,
And
so
I think that is, and I think that's the one thing that is sticking out to me is with metamorphic testing. It's more about making sure you understand first what you're testing for, right?
hmm
Because that's almost the most important question of
hmm
what am I trying to test for? What is that relationship? And if the
right,
relationship on the because you come up with a relationship equation,
hmm
and if you've got a constant on one side, then you basically have an oracle test.
yep, yep,
But metamorphic lets you have effectively variables on
mhm,
both sides, and you just assert that given operator x,
yep,
this equation it returns true.
hmm
I think I like it.
yeah, I did too.
Makes it very interesting. And
hmm
yeah, I do think that it would be fun to get in and set up a UI framework, or at least see what the effort is.
hmm
And I may even take a crack at seeing about you know building a simple WPF app where I can feed it in some data, because I don't even need to live inside of the library, right?
right,
Like at that point, it has nothing to do really with the internals of the library. I can test this completely outside.
yep,
That's actually probably
yeah,
better, actually.
yeah, and I mean, as long as someone doesn't try and customize it, you should be good to go. I mean, as far as like in their app,
Right.
as long as they're just using the out of the box, library functionality, yeah, shouldn't matter where you test it.
I think I want to try it now. Darn it. Why is it all the best ideas happen right around this time at night?
I think I read somewhere that people are more creative when they're like sleep deprived, but also it's bad for your health.
I would not be surprised if they were more creative. I would be surprised if the ideas were any good.
Touche.
Because the quality of my ideas, or I should say the quantity of my ideas, definitely goes up the later it gets,
Uh-huh.
but the quality goes down.
Fair enough. Uh,
Well, cool. Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate
yeah,
this. This was
you're
fun. We
welcome.
should do this more.
Good. Absolutely.
So,
I definitely enjoyed this, and I I am excited that, and maybe this is personal criticism, but I'm excited that I finally got a chance to like sit down. I know I wasn't the one typing, but participate in setting up a couple of these tests.
yeah. Well, and maybe next time I make you drive, and I'll be
Mhm.
the one watching and following along and seeing how it goes.
Sounds good.
Cool. Well, I think we are probably going to be signing off for the night. Just want to tell everyone thank you for coming and watching, and we will probably do stuff again next week. I think if nothing changes, we may end up going back to some material design stuff next week. I've been trying to poke at it during the week just to make sure the library isn't sitting still, obviously. Um, but we may also end up doing some unit testing stuff. So I'll extend the invite out if people are interested. I'm always looking for people to do more stuff like what Mike and I did here, whether it's some topic you want to learn, something you just want to work, or you just want to pair and have fun for an evening. If so, let me know in the comments. That would be great. Mike, thanks again. All of Mike's links will be in the video description for anybody who wants to track him down. For that, say happy coding, and we'll see you again next week.
Happy coding.